Well, I'm thirsty.
We should make a blooper episode of us just.
Hi, I'm Kalvin.
Hi, I'm Aliyah.
Hi, I'm Devynn. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to I Can Relate. This is our second season, and I am so unbelievably happy to be here today. For this season, we actually have a lot of new members, which is super exciting. So what we're doing is we kind of split off into groups, and we're going to be talking about a few different topics. We want to be safe with COVID. And today, what we're going to be talking about is racism. And we have Aliyah here to kind of share her story and a situation that happened with her mom that deals with racism.
Hi, I'm Aliyah, and as Devynn said, this is a story about my mom, and it happened after 9/11, which was a big thing for us Muslims. I know you guys can't see, but I'm a Muslim. I wear a hijab. My mom also wears one. And this was after 9/11. She was walking down the street with my grandma, and I think it was also my aunt, and some very rude gentleman came up to her and tried to take off her scarf, which was, he tried to take off her scarf and then proceeded to throw the middle finger in her face. And obviously my mom was confused at first, but in the end, she ended up shoving her middle finger in his face as well. So, and according to her, her middle finger was bigger than his.
That's kind of crazy that you bring up that topic, because today in debate we're actually doing book talks, and this girl actually had a book over 9/11 and why it happened, America's role in that. And it just kind of brought back the realization that after 9/11 happened, there was so much xenophobia and racism that came out of that. And the girl who was presenting made a really good comment that there's so much still now, but especially then, with so much miseducation on the effects of 9/11 and why it happened. And I think it's so disheartening to see so many people, especially in this country, who, take a situation that they're absolutely not 1,000% educated on and make these very broad assumptions on entire, not only race, but religious group of people. So how do you think that has affected your mom after that?
Well, I asked her, because obviously when you hear that type of story, you would hope that you would never have to deal with that. And she just said that it made her very on edge at all times. Mm-hmm. So she always would be aware someone's following her. And at that time, she was in New York. Mm-hmm. So if someone was behind her, she would try but it's also New York, so there's a bunch of people.
Yeah, exactly.
But she would try and be cautious of who's around her, if they seemed reading their body language, if they seemed like they were being more aggressive or watching her. She would be extra cautious, and she would never go out alone after that as often. Mm-hmm. It would only be we lived close to each other. Our family, we like to stay close to each other. So it would be separate apartments. Mm-hmm. So she would only go apartment to apartment, but she would never go down the street to the corner store. She would be very careful.
Yeah, and I knew that you told me that you were from New York, and I couldn't even imagine a Muslim woman, a Muslim family, living in that area at that time. I would be terrified, honestly.
Yes, my family has a lot of girls, mostly boys, but there are some girls.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that it was you had to be a team, and it was a project.
Absolutely.
To get out.
And all of them were hijabi?
My grandma is hijabi, but she wears it very loosely. So, sometimes it falls off. She doesn't monitor it as much.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But she's older. And my mom and my aunt are hijabis.
Yeah. Are a majority of the women in your family hijabis, or does it just kind of vary from person to person?
Because it's not even age. Because I know a lot of people have the conception that it is, if you're older, you reach a certain age, it is forced upon you. Mm-hmm. It's never forced upon you.
Yeah.
And, I have an aunt who is in her early 30s,
mm-hmm.
and she doesn't wear it.
Yeah.
Most people would assume that a hijabi would start wearing it.
Yeah.
And so it just varies depending on what that person wants,
mm-hmm.
and if they're comfortable doing it. And obviously, if you live in a household that sees racism happen often,
absolutely,
you do not want to. It scares you to
mm-hmm.
wear the hijab. Yeah.
Well, I think that definitely that perception definitely stems from, like you were saying, a lot of misconceptions about Muslim people or just, Islamic countries and stuff like that, especially after 9/11 with all of the xenophobia and racism that was happening. I think that, when people see these governments, these majority Islamic governments in the Middle East, and they conflate that with the religion and
Absolutely.
Islam itself. And I think that they, sort of apply those totalitarian ideas and stuff to the religion, and they think that, oh, this is oppressing women, oh, women don't have a choice, oh, this and that, and it's just really not the case. And
Absolutely.
I think it's so harmful and it's very toxic, but yeah.
And to kind of branch off what you were saying into kind of a different topic, was you talking about after this racist interaction happened with your mom, she was very scared and on edge. And, Kalvin is a black male. I'm a black woman, more specifically biracial. My dad is black. My mom is white. You're a Muslim woman. So I think all of us and so many other minorities deal in the fear, conduct ourselves in the fear of, not in fear of racism, but kind of always in the back of your mind, like, you know what, I'm a person of color, I'm a woman of color, I'm this and this and that. I'm going to go out into the real world, quote unquote.
Yeah, it's something you have to be aware
Absolutely.
of. Yeah. If you're a black female or male or anyone of color or a different ethnicity, you're aware of that. And if you're not aware of that, you're putting yourself in danger. That's
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, and you guys would understand, it's just really no way to live.
Yeah.
Like you said, your mom, she was looking behind her. She was scared, living in fear all the time. And a lot of POC, especially after events like 9/11 or, and in the minds of so many people, especially in America and especially with white people, all it takes is one POC or one person from one group to do one thing. And that's, like we seen with COVID and a lot of violence happening towards Asian American people.
Absolutely.
People who are even, born here and never even been to China, to Japan.
Yes.
And, we see all these different Asian people being conflated together into one group, and a lot of violence happening to them over something that they had absolutely no control over, which
Absolutely.
is completely ridiculous.
Finger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it can't be themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
So I actually just finished the book called Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? And they made Dr. Tatum, who was actually the 9th president of Spelman College, and for those of you who don't know, Spelman is a notorious HBCU. And I feel like many people of color, but especially in the black community, we see that we cannot be individuals. If a white male, white woman, whoever were to shoot up a school or rape someone or this and this and that, they're seen as an individual. What can we do to help this individual? But if it were to be a black male, a white or a black woman, any other person of color, oh, it's the black community's fault. Yes. Oh, a Muslim person did that. That's the religion's fault.
And then you get into stereotypes like being ghetto.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, what you're saying, Kalvin, it's really, I know me, as an individual and kind of growing up, I have been very lucky to be privileged in my identity and never tried to look like a white girl. I've never tried to straighten my hair. I've always been very proud of who I am. But with that being said, I've also had to maneuver around being stereotyped, because I know if I have a feeling that if I'm put in this box at all of a stereotypical black girl, I will not be able to achieve what I want, because so many people, see a black woman stand her ground, or even a woman in general, but especially a black woman, especially women of color. We speak up for ourselves, we do this or that, and we're seen as the angry black girl, and that was a stereotype growing up that I really wanted to stray as far away from as I could, because I didn't want people to think I was mean or that and that. But then, growing up, I kind of realized, especially after reading this book, that I don't want to live my life that way anymore. If I feel the need to stick up for myself, I'm going to do that. But once again, it's very easy for me to say, because there's so many other people, especially women of darker skin tones and darker complexions, who have it so much worse than me. So, talking about stereotypes, it's something that I feel like, especially for minorities, that kind of sticks upon us, all the time. It's something that's kind of in the back of our minds, or something that when people look at us, stereotypes kind of probably the first thing that comes to people's minds.
Yeah, I completely 100% understand and relate and agree with that. We aren't allowed to be individuals. That's just like you said, it's just the truth about our existence. And we learned that from a very young age. I remember And one of the instances that really sticks out to me about like stereotypes is I was in class. This happened like my freshman year, and I was like going through my grades. We use a program called Power School, and I was just going through, and I'm not trying to like flex or anything, but you know, I am a straight A student. You know, I always get at least an A-. I've only gotten like 1 B+ in like my entire school career. And thank you.
Congratulations.
So, you know, I was just going through my grades, and I was like, oh, there's an A-. I really want to get that up or whatever. I was just, you know, kind of looking at my grades and making sure everything was okay. And one of my peers looks over and she goes, oh my God, your grades are so good. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, thank you, you know. And she said, I didn't expect you, you know, to have good grades. And I don't know how she meant that. And if she meant it in the way that I took it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, it's like, what do you, like why wouldn't I have good grades?
What grade were you in again?
I'm sorry?
What grade were you in when this happened?
This was my freshman year.
Yeah. And to me, like, knowing you for so long, that's such a surprising thing for anyone to say to you, because knowing you, you just like scream in like, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
But yeah, like, once again, it's stuff like that, you know, even when I go through school, I do kind of have that fear in the back of my mind that's like, oh, she's like the token black girl, you know, she, you know, does really good in school and is super outspoken and is in so many clubs, and she has all these close relationships with her principals and teachers. And seeing that like bothers me a lot, because I don't want to be seen as that. And I'm, you know, tell me if I'm wrong. I feel like all of us have maybe have felt that, you know, that teachers put on this different, you know, I don't want to be compared to like other black students or other students of color, because I have no idea what the student is going through who happens to be a black male or a black woman. You know, I'm no different than them. I just, once again, have a lot of privileges in my life. And that's something that I've been really scared of, is being stereotyped that way as like this, you know, token black girl or this token minority. You know, it's just, it's things like that we as humans should not, that should be the last thing on our minds.
I 100% agree about that tokenism. It's like, okay, we have two choices, you know. We can either be the stereotypical, and I say this with quotes for those of us at home, stereotypical black, stereotypical Muslim, stereotypical Asian, whatever person, or we can shift from that and be the tokenized person that we're different from other people in our group, you know. And like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And this never happens to white people. Like I said, white people are allowed to be individuals. They're never compared to, you know, they're the normal. I say this with quotes again.
Absolutely.
They are the normal.
And it's the need to put yourself in like a box. Everyone wants to put you in a box. And like you were saying, when you add into the aspect of being half black, half white, they don't know where to put you. Do we put you on the black side?
Absolutely,
Do we
yeah.
put you on the white side? Then your whole life, they're sitting there thinking, okay, she did this. That gives her a point for being, you know, black.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
wrong. And
No,
you did this,
no, you're right.
And that's another point for being white. And then, today, by the end of the week, it kind of seems like you were more black than white.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, also with that being said, being from a biracial background and, you know, being raised by black women and being surrounded by my, you know, white family and white peers, once again, I come from a place of privilege to be able to say that my identity has not been something I struggled with. And once again, I give that medal to the women in my family, more specifically black women, who, you know, told me at a young age to just be confident in who I am as a person and me as an individual. So yeah, absolutely, you know, from other people's eyes, they may want to put me in this box of like, oh, you're a black girl or you're a white girl. And once again, it's just like, number one, that's not anyone's place to do. And at the end of the day, I'm more than like my skin tone and who I, like, you know, there's more to me as an individual than that. And once again, going back to the same issue, people of color and minorities cannot be individuals.
And like you're saying that you were never afraid of your identity.
Yeah.
You knew who you were. I applaud you for that, because as myself, I used to, obviously before I wore the scarf in elementary school, I used to hide the fact that I was Muslim. And these kids they wouldn't, like, not bullying, but they would pride me for the answer of, okay, so but what religion are you?
Yeah.
One time my dad owns gas stations, because so he owns a lot of gas stations, so we get free t-shirts. And one of them said, keep calm and curry on. Curry as in curry.
Yeah,
and,
the food.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know.
Yeah, curry. And then they're like, oh, so you are Indian. Like, we knew it, your color. And then I was like, why does that matter?
Absolutely.
And I always try to hide it. And then finally in middle school, I started wearing my scarf my hijab in the middle of 7th grade. Then they finally were like, you could see on their faces when they saw me after so long, they're like, I can identify you now. I was like, who? And I know they're not saying that, but when you look at the relief, almost the relief they feel when they look at you, it's like, wow, that really mattered so much to you.
Absolutely.
You carried it on for almost 7-8
yes.
years. Yeah.
You know, and also with that, kind of going back to what you were saying, as an individual, for us, you know, my race, if it wasn't for racism, I honestly don't think my race would be a big deal to me, you know? But with that being said, in the book I'm reading as well, or read, Dr. Tatum talks a little bit about how we need to start educating people, more specifically people at a very young age.
Yes, that's what I also agree.
Yes.
Once you get it at the young age, because if you think about it, you wouldn't, when you go up to a little kid, they wouldn't be like, oh, well, she's black or he's Hispanic. They don't think like that. To them, you're a person.
Absolutely.
And they judge by the mind and heart. That's it.
And, you know, kind of saying two things here. You know, you're talking about the curry thing and they're like, oh, you're Indian. You know, once again, it's people who rely on stereotypes, you know, because through media and jokes, whatever, you know, a lot of people equate curry to Indian or Asian. And in reality, there's probably so many other, correct me if I'm wrong, other people, other religious groups who eat that food.
Yeah. And even the word curry in general, a curry isn't a now we're stereotyping food. So a curry is, it's one specific type of food, but there's other like soupy. I know a lot of our food is kind of like soupy. Where I'm trying to relate it. It's more soupy and thick, where you have like chicken bones and you eat it with like pita bread, something like pita bread. We make it at home, so it's called roti. So we did that. So it's like curry isn't. They have used that word. By they, I mean like people in society, and mainly white people.
I mean,
go ahead and say it.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if to say Caucasian or white people. I was like, am I being formal? Caucasian or white people.
Yeah.
Whichever one you want.
But, sorry, go on.
And so, yeah, they have created that as a word to just simply just say, like, oh, they're different.
Yeah.
It's not hamburgers and hot dogs.
Yeah. You know, and also in the book I'm reading, Dr. Tatum hits so hard on stereotypes. And she talks about how a lot of people are in these areas that are predominantly white. And you're a white person, predominantly black, and you're a black person, predominantly Asian, and you're an Asian person. So the only form of the only way you see other people's races and ethnicities and cultures is through media and entertainment. And we see that a lot of times throughout entertainment, it is stereotypes. It's stereotypical. And that's why I push so hard for multiracial communities and for people to be surrounded by one another, because, you know, I do get mad at a lot of people for having these stereotypes, but once again, you can't at the same time, I feel like, because
they were raised that way. Yeah, that's what they were raised.
Not only that, but it's like we are so consumed with media and movies and television. So if you're a young, you know, white girl on TV seeing how a Native American is portrayed, and I think I've seen a Native American once in my life, you know, let's be real here. You're going to take that stereotypical depiction of them and be like, oh, this is what Native Americans are, you know, and we need to start, once again, going back is like educating people at a young age, and not only that, educating ourselves, because, you know, and you kind of talked a little bit about how kids don't see race, and I agree with you, but Dr. Tatum did talk about how between ages of like 3 and 5, that's when kids start seeing racial features, you know, differences of like, oh, your nose is different than mine, or, you know, my hair texture is different than yours, because we're kids. We start, you know, noticing different things. But once again, hitting back to the same point, with that being said, we need to start educating these younger kids, because if you don't, it just breeds racial ignorance.
Oh my God, I cannot stress that same point enough. I want to also go back to your point about the media and how important it is, and how the portrayal of POC, or the portrayal of people of, you know, different ethnicities or different, you know, religious groups, whether Christian, Muslim, Jew, whatever, is so important in the media. You know, when kids grow up watching YouTube videos of Black women being aggressive and loud or stereotypical or not being seen as beautiful, they're just being the best friend, you know.
Absolutely.
That never have, you know, their own
the
love
black
interest.
sidekick.
Yes. When they grow up and they see, you know, instances of Asian men who are, you know, in the male category considered the least desirable,
Absolutely.
also being viewed as, you know, the nerd or smart or whatever, that is going to stick, and that is
Absolutely.
that's what they are going to, you know, absorb, and that's how they're going to, you know, perceive those people. I 100% agree. The education and the media that we let our kids see from a young age is going to stick with them for their entire lives, and it's going to be something that is going to be very difficult to get rid of.
Yeah.
So I think one of the first steps we really can take is just changing the way Black women, changing the way Asian men, changing the way all of these groups are seen in the media.
Absolutely.
First step.
Yeah.
And sorry to interrupt you, but coming from personal experience and thinking about growing up and seeing the Muslim religion and even Middle Eastern people portrayed, you know, I don't even think I've ever seen Middle Eastern and the Muslim religion or people who practice that shown in a good light, honestly.
Yeah. And I 100%
Me too.
agree.
Yeah.
I always feel like for me personally, when I put on this scarf, all of a sudden I have to prove my worth and prove the fact that, you know, like, I'm cool. Because if you know me in person, I'm always joking, and sometimes I can't shut up. So, I'm always joking, so I have to prove the fact that, hey, I'm funny. Even though I have that scarf on, I can make mildly inappropriate jokes.
Like, you're, you know, not this weird stereotype that people portray you as. And, you know, something else with that, when it comes to stereotypes and you being so different, you know, I was raised by my dad raised my siblings and I, who happens to be a Black male. And I notice, even when people go to my cousin's house, because, you know, my dad has 2 Black brothers, obviously, and, you know, they're extremely involved in their kids' lives. And, you know, I'm very close with my Uncle Welton. So when we go to their house, or even when people ask me, like, so what's your parent situation? It's very odd when they see that, like, I'm with my dad. Like, my dad has raised my siblings and I. And for me, like, I find that odd, obviously, because I was always like, you know, I understand that it may be rare to see, you know, kind of going back to the same thing. Is it rare because he's a male, or is it because he's Black, or is it both? You know, and obviously from my point of view and personal perspective, you know, all the men in my dad's family are super active in their kids' lives and love their children. So when people have that, like, kind of odd, like, oh, really? It throws me off, honestly, every single time. And it really shouldn't, because, you know, once again, it's the stereotype. But it's stuff like that it's like, going back to the point, it's like, you need to educate yourself. You need to see that, you know, these minorities and these people from these different groups are not the stereotypes that you portray them as.
I want to go back to where you said, obviously, education. You said the kids that start noticing features like, oh, your nose is bigger than mine.
Yeah.
Why is your hair curly? Why is it black? Mine is blonde. That comes, but it comes from, you said, racial ignorance.
Absolutely.
So if you teach that, and you teach them that that's normal and that's still beautiful, like, you have an afro, and I look at it and I'm like, oh, that's, you know, like, he has hair.
Yeah.
And it's big, and I kind of want to touch it, but I know.
Yeah, no.
I never want to touch it, but you just think, like, fluffy. But you think that, and then you see it, and if you teach your kids that at a young age, like, I do that with my brother. I'm not my brother's mom, obviously, but just showing him that, okay, you know, like, so-and-so wears this, or wears cultural clothes, you know, that's different, that's beautiful.
Absolutely.
And accept that and praise that. Like, give them credit for being able to be unique and not have to, like, wanting to fall into a category.
Yes. And, you know, even through most of the issues with the LSR 7 school district, I am very happy because I have been surrounded by, even though the minority group is not where it should be, what we do have, I'm very privileged to say that I have been able to make friends from so many different aspects and parts of life. And that's probably more than a lot of people can say, because I'm sure there are schools that I could go to where I would be the only minority. And I just want to say that I'm very privileged to have had friends, or even current friends, that come from all different walks of life who have been able to educate me. You know, my neighbor, who was a Muslim male, like, I am so happy that we were close at a time, because he educated me so much on your religion, and I felt like I am so much more educated on that, you know?
Yeah, just having friends from different religions, cultures, different anything, just gives you a better understanding of life. Maybe it's even appreciation, or
absolutely,
something like that. It's just just to know that you're not living life in, like, a one straight path, but you get to see different stuff. It's really helpful, and it betters you.
Yes, normalize uniqueness.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
can't stress that enough, you know. And I also want to touch back on your point when you said you know, people need to educate themselves. That is the first step. Is, you know, you really have to start with yourself. I feel like a lot of, and this is with my experience especially, and my involvement with school, or sometimes, you know, just being the only black kid in class, people as POC really expect you to, you know, be the teacher, as well as all these other roles that are, and all these other stereotypes, etc., that are put on POC. People also want you to teach them to how to unlearn that.
Yeah.
I just really want to say, you know, for those at home and everyone, educate yourself. No
Absolutely.
matter what group you are, no matter what group you're in, no matter what, educate yourself. That is your job.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Even if you don't have access, because like you were saying, there are places that you can go and you can be the only one that's different, or
Absolutely.
I don't want to say unique because everyone's
Mm-hmm.
you're
Yeah.
not in a stereotype.
Yeah, exactly.
Just, I forgot what I was saying.
But you know, something else that I was thinking about that I think is so prevalent now in current time, especially this past year, I've seen a lot of celebrities, a lot of kids, just on TikTok, social media, who have like really racist pasts.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like, oh, well, they're young and they're this and they're that. And I'm like, I'm not going to sit back here because I know that there's things that I've said when I was younger that I would never say now. But I was never calling someone like well, I know I'm a woman of color, but still, like, you know, it's very like nasty, disgusting things that these people were saying. And I think a lot of times so many people want to give these people like a pat on the back. And I want to let you know that, like, I feel like racism and the effects of racism need to be treated just like mental illness is treated, because people do not understand like the effects racism has on minorities and people of color. You know, you could say something very passive like, oh, you're pretty for a black girl, or something absolutely blatant and horrible. And both of those things could stick with a person for the rest of their lives. So you want to give this racist person a pat on the back, but you're not even sitting back here thinking about the person that they affected with those words.
Yes, I think people, especially white people, see racism as a misfortune instead of as a true evil. And a true evil that is perpetuated by them, you know?
Absolutely.
This isn't something like, you know, that just POC are just experiencing. This is a system. This is real. This is happening in real time, no matter how small or how big.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they would say like you were saying, they would say disgusting things. That's where you're supposed to have, where you have to reel them in and you have to tell them that, hey, what you're doing is wrong.
Absolutely.
And you shouldn't. That's why they think of it as a privilege. But then if you were to say, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? Like, I'm pretty for a black girl. I'm a pretty girl.
Yeah,
you could say
absolutely.
That. When they take that aback, like, oh, she corrected me, that's because of the privilege that people have had and getting away with it constantly.
Absolutely.
And I also want to say, back to what you were saying about people, you know, wanting to be praised for not being racist.
Yeah, it's very odd.
Yeah, that is not cute.
No.
Okay,
Yeah.
Trust me, POC. No one wants to hear about how racist, how classist, how whatever you were.
No.
We don't care. First of all, we don't care.
No.
Second of all, that is kind of worrisome if
yes,
you think that's
absolutely,
you know, appropriate. And third of all, you should not be getting praised for the bare minimum.
Absolutely.
Basic human decency. Come on, guys.
Yeah, human decency. That's what it is. You just don't need to be racist and then get praised for it.
Okay, guys. So after all that talk about, you know, talking about the issues that we see and the different struggles that POC go through, now it brings us to the question, what to do next? You know, how can POC do things to help ourselves? How can white people be better allies, etc.? So I'm going to read you guys some ideas that a local school board member sent to us about their views and ideas on how to help our community be better and, you know, have better conversations and be impactful. So they sent us a list. 1, educate yourself on the history of race in America. This includes the history of chattel slavery and all its present implications. 2, be courageous enough to listen to the experiences of people of color, even when it's uncomfortable. 3, use your voice to amplify those experiences. 4, take action using the knowledge you've gained to change systems of oppression in everyday life, from the smallest, to the largest issues. Be brave and don't back down.
Now, out of those, I think number 2 sticks out to me or us the
Yeah,
most.
for sure.
Yes.
Because mainly because of the use of the word uncomfortable. Now,
Yeah.
all those points were great,
Mhm.
and they're all something that we should talk about. But because she used the word, or they used the word uncomfortable, we should definitely talk about that.
Yeah.
It relates most to what we've been talking about.
Mhm.
And I also just want to say, the thing about, she said, be courageous. I understand, and this is, I'm not saying like, anything as an excuse or anything like that, but I do understand that with white people, some of the things that POC may say may completely shake their world, especially when you consider how a lot of white people are brought up,
Yeah.
or, the things they see in the media, like we were saying, or they just may have never had any sort of exposure to POC.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that a lot of the things we say or are talking about may be so foreign to some
Yeah.
people. So like you were saying, be uncomfortable and be brave, I guess.
Let's read number
But-
2 again so they know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Be courageous enough to listen to the experiences of people of color, even when it's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
That is just so important. Listen to POC.
Absolutely.
Oh my God. Listen to POC. We know what we're talking about.
Yes.
We know about racism.
Yeah,
Why?
we
Because we
experience-
experience racism. Like, listen to us. Oh my God.
I felt like over the past year, something that I saw a lot was like the questioning of people of color's experiences and if they're valid or not. And, well, how do you know like that happens, or how do you know that's a thing? And it's like,
How do you know?
I'm like, my dad has gone through this, my brothers, my uncles, my aunts, like the neighbor down the street,
It's not just a one-time thing.
Absolutely. And I feel like when racism is brought up and stuff like that, everyone gets uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable topic. If you get comfortable when when racist topics are being brought up, that's really weird to me. But, with that being said, do not question like people of color and like what they're going through, because it's extremely invalidating. And like I said before earlier, is racism is such a big issue and a big deal, and it needs to be treated as such. And once again, there's so many people who have experienced so many racist situations that have affected them for the rest of their lives, things that people may not even think about. So with that being said, you wouldn't talk to a war vet about war and question that and question the validity of what they're saying. So why would you question a black person or an Asian woman or a Middle Eastern person about their experiences and what they've gone through?
And then if that war vet had PTSD, you wouldn't try to
Absolutely.
sit there and invalidate that PTSD or say it's not real.
Absolutely.
Or that pain isn't, is just fake. You know?
I just want to add that there's 2 different types of questioning. There's not curiosity, but I want to say questioning as in not invalidating a person
Yeah,
and
yeah.
their experience. And there's questioning of curiosity and wanting to learn.
Yes,
That's where our
absolutely.
education comes
Greatly
in.
said.
Where you can talk to a person who wears a hijab, a person of color, that you can talk to them about their thing and be respectful in their boundaries
Yes.
and don't downgrade them,
Mm-hmm.
but also learn because you don't know about something.
But I do also want to say it is not the job of, oppressed peoples, marginalized peoples to educate you.
Mm-hmm.
That is your job.
Yeah.
Now, some people may feel comfortable or may be okay with educating you. Some people don't. If they
Yeah.
don't, that is okay. And it's really not their job.
Yeah.
You need to do that yourself. If you can Google the question, I would Google it first. Or if it's, but if it is something if it's a question that pertains to that specific person and their experiences with racism or whatever, then okay.
Yeah, and also with that, hearing a person of color talk about the racism that they've gone through, if you get offended, I think that's something that you like hearing this person, discuss the issues and the racism that they felt, and you feel offended or attacked. I think that's something that you need to dig a little bit deeper on, because I've seen that a lot through social media. Black and brown people and other minorities discussing the issues and the racism that they've felt or dealt with or seen from their peers, and a lot of people get very butthurt, honestly, I think is the best word. And it's like, if this has nothing to do with you or this doesn't pertain to you, why are you getting hurt? And that kind of comes in the aspect of being courageous enough to listen to what people of color are talking about. Obviously, no sane person is going to say, well, all white people are bad or all white people are racist. No, but they're talking about their experiences and what they felt. And sadly, a lot of times it is from white people or white perpetrators, from what I've seen with my peers, what they dealt with. So instead of getting hurt or feeling, attacked, try to, as a white person or a white individual, to talk to your peers about racism and maybe even educating them.
Yeah. And that goes back to asking questions respectfully, and trying to set limits and boundaries to know when you're going to cross the line.
Absolutely.
And not cross that line where it could be a fight. We will fight you.
Yeah.
I would also say my advice on how to be a better ally or, better fight these systems is first start with reflection in yourself.
Absolutely.
What kind of privileges do I have?
Yeah.
I can guarantee that 99.999% of us have some sort of privilege that we can be using to help others.
Yes.
You really have to just sit down with yourself and think, how am I, pushing forward these systems of oppression, because you most likely are, whether or not you realize it or not, and how can I stop that? What can I do? How can I educate others? How can I, you just really have to start with self-reflection first and then go out into the world. So, yeah.
And, sorry, go on.
No, I wasn't going to.
And with that as well, I think talking about privilege, even biased, I feel like everyone has just the society that we live in, once again, being bombarded with stereotypes and racial ignorance from all aspects of life, black, white, Asian, whatever. Once again, look within yourself and see what bias you may have. If you're walking down the street and you see a black male and you feel the need to clutch your purse, unpack that. If you see a Muslim woman or a Muslim man and you feel uncomfortable or scared, unpack that. It's little bias like that you may think is nothing, or you may not even realize until you're in a situation or a space with a Muslim person or a black male and they see you clutching your purse and they see you being visibly scared. Once again, it's situations like that cause so much trauma for people of color and minorities. So unpack that bias, see how you may view people of color, sit down with yourself and say, do I have racist views? Do I have these biased views? And if you do, unpack them and work on that.
I also want to add to that, I want to say, with issues of racial preference in the dating world, if
absolutely.
You genuinely do not feel attracted to a certain racial group or a certain, if you genuinely don't find yourself being attracted to black women or Asian men or black men, whatever, unpack that.
Absolutely.
Because trust me, it's rooted in white supremacy.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt.
It's the word of the day is unpack that.
Unpack that.
Yeah. The phrase of the day.
Yeah.
So just the reference of that is self-reflection. And honestly, just taking the time to be true. Because a lot of times
absolutely.
I can sit there and be like, oh, I'm not hungry. I'm using the bare minimum example. I'm not hungry to not eat. But really, I see that food on the table and I want to eat.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So being able to do that is just being honest with yourself. You don't have to do it in front of people. Just sit in a room by yourself. Just think about what's going on.
Absolutely.
And then once you do that, then we can move on to the third and fourth point. Use your voice to amplify those experiences. Take action using the knowledge you've gained to change systems of oppression in everyday life, from the smallest to the largest issues. Be brave. Once you unpack that, then, I feel like that's going to leave a lot of people asking, then what? Go out into the world and do what you know to do at that point.
Absolutely.
Educate your peers. Racism comes in so many different languages and dialects. Racism comes in so many different,
forms and shapes, whatever.
Everything. There's probably something racist going on around you. If you see your peers making a joke that you may not think is harmful, but you know that
absolutely.
You know that it's racist.
Yeah.
Confront your peers. Educate them on why that's not okay.
Yes.
Make this a better world for everyone,
And maybe what they're doing, they don't know is racist because it was never brought to
their
attention.
Exactly.
Yeah, they might be around people that they would do the same thing.
Yes.
So if you're a person of color or a person of a different religion, culture, whatever, you need to respectfully do it, and you need to be able to calmly say, try to bring it to their attention.
Yeah.
And whether or not they decide to self-reflect on why they did that or what was the reason for them to do that, they can what was the reason, they can do that on their own.
Yes,
That's not
absolutely.
up to you, but you know that you have done whatever you can.
Absolutely. Just kind of to end things off, I think the main point of what we're trying to talk about here is there's so many layers and different aspects to racism. And obviously, I know the three of us would love to sit back here all day and unpack it as much as we can, but we can't. So I think the two main things that we really tried to push is, one, educate yourself, educate your peers, educate the people that you're around, because racism is such a big issue and affects so many people. Two,
even white people.
Absolutely. Two, unpack your bias, unpack the way you see people, the way you view the world, because once again, like you guys said, you may not think that you have these racist ideas or these racial prejudices, but I think there's a lot of people that do. And at the end of the day, do what's best for you and the community and educate yourself so the world can be better and we can kind of end these racial divides block by block by block.
Yeah, and guys, this is an issue that is so deep and so large and so widespread. We see this across the world. So, we obviously, this is not an issue that can be solved overnight, but we all have to take the steps that we can and do what we can to stop this. But yeah, guys,
thank you so much for listening.
Go out, drink water, be your best person,
live life,
fight for POC, guys.
Absolutely.
And have a good day.
Yeah, can I just add that for anyone who doesn't know, because I know you've used POC a lot, I figured out, like, in the middle of this podcast, POC means person of color.
Yes. Yay.
But yeah, guys, that's the end of this show. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you guys so much for listening. Bye, guys.
Bye. If you guys would, want to educate yourself more on race and racial issues, especially with the Black community, I would really recommend the book by Dr. Tatum, Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? And then Race Matters by Dr. Cornel West.
And my book recommendations are Wretched of the Earth by Frantz Fanon and The Souls of Black Folk by W.E.B. Du Bois.
TED Talk, if you download their app, this is where I see it on. They have a whole section about racism where they have people who talk about it, and it's through all different aspects and a lot of different things. So that's really cool.
The I Can Relate podcast is made possible by private donation and the generosity of Lee Summit Cares. Lee Summit Cares is a nonprofit coalition that seeks to mobilize community partners to develop a culture of physical and mental wellness for Lee Summit youth and families that inspires positive, healthy choices. For more information about Lee Summit Cares, visit lscares.org. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or most any of your favorite podcast apps. You can also find us at icanrelate.fredcast.com. I Can Relate is a production of Fredcast. Think, speak,